Amara Jackson stepped out of her black Tesla and onto the pristine marble of the luxury dealership in trance, her heels clicking softly but confidently with each step. The sun caught the subtle shimmer of her designer coat, a muted gold that spoke of wealth without shouting it, and the rare, understated elegance that only someone of her upbringing could carry effortlessly. In her hand, she held her son Malik's small leather backpack. The boy was only 12, but already exuded a presence that made the world around him pause, though today he walked quietly beside her, mostly hidden in the shadow of her poised frame. The doors of the dealership opened automatically, sliding smoothly aside with a gentle hiss, revealing rows of cars that gleamed like polished jewels under the showroom lights. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Lamborghinis, all lined in perfect symmetry, as if waiting for their wealthy owners to choose the one worthy of them. But the dealer behind the front desk barely raised his eyes as Amara approached. A smirk spread across his face, casual but unmistakably condescending. "And who are we pretending to be today?" he asked, leaning slightly over the counter, his voice dripping with amusement. "Another Instagram influencer with a few rented cars in her feed." Amara froze for the briefest moment, just long enough for him to feel confident in his judgment, before she allowed a faint, polite smile to form on her lips. There was no anger in her expression, no hint of the storm that had simmered inside her for years. Instead, she simply kept walking, letting the subtle authority of her presence fill the space. She was acutely aware of every detail, the way his smirk barely hid the undercurrent of arrogance, the way the other staff glanced at her and then quickly looked away, uncomfortable with his audacity. Her eyes flicked over the cars without any trace of the almost people displayed in places like this. The metallic curves, the sleek lines, the polished chrome, they were merely objects to her, symbols of a world she had navigated her entire life. And yet, there was a thrill in walking among them, a reminder that even in a space designed to intimidate or exclude, she belonged here, on her own terms. The dealer leaned back slightly, now chuckling to himself. "I don't usually see people like you in here," he said, his voice louder this time, drawing the attention of another salesperson nearby. "Must be some kind of mistake." He gestured vaguely at her coat, her posture, her calm, calculating gaze. The implication was clear. This was not a woman who could afford any of this, at least not in his mind. Amara's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. She let a heartbeat pass, letting the silence speak as much as her presence. She wasn't here to argue. She wasn't here to convince him. She was here to observe, to let the dealer believe he had the upper hand, while knowing perfectly well that he had no idea who he was really dealing with. Beside her, Malik tugged lightly at her sleeve, his eyes scanning the rows of cars with curiosity and that quiet, measured intensity that made him seem older than his years. Amara's hand went to his shoulder, resting there briefly, a grounding touch, as if to remind him to stay calm. He didn't need the reminder. He had learned early that some people underestimated him because of his age, or the color of his skin, or the way he carried himself. And most people paid dearly for that underestimation. Amara's gaze returned to the dealer. His smirk faltered slightly as he noticed how composed she was, how utterly unfazed. "I'm interested in a few things," she said, her tone casual but sharp, almost playful. "But first, I need someone to help me understand the options." Her words carried no hesitation, no subservience, only a quiet command that demanded attention. The dealer blinked, his amusement wavering for the first time. "Options," he repeated, unsure. He leaned forward again, but the confidence in his posture was beginning to crack. Amara met his eyes evenly, not flinching, letting the power in her presence settle over him like a weight. For a moment, the hum of the dealership seemed to quiet around them, the distant echoes of footsteps and low murmurs fading into the background. The staff could feel it, the unspoken authority, the way she carried herself with the certainty that only someone who truly belonged could radiate. Malik shifted slightly, his own confidence subtly growing as he watched the interaction, understanding more than his years should have allowed. And through it all, Amara remained calm, poised, almost serene. The dealer had laughed at her, dismissed her, underestimated her, but he had no idea what he was about to encounter. Not yet. And when the truth came out, the realization would hit him like a shockwave, leaving him pale, speechless, and painfully aware of the mistake he had made. But for now, she walked slowly past the first row of gleaming vehicles, her hand lightly brushing the hood of a black Lamborghini as she let him stew in his arrogance. Malik followed silently, sensing the moment, sensing the tension, sensing the story that was just beginning to unfold. The stage was set, and the dealer, laughing at his own assumptions, had no idea that he was about to meet a force far greater than his prejudices. Amara tilted her head slightly, glanced at Malik, and whispered just enough for him to hear, "Patience, baby. Let them think they're in control." Malik nodded, understanding instantly. The game had begun, and they were already winning. The dealer, a man in his mid-40s with a carefully groomed mustache and an ego the size of the showroom, tried to regain his composure as Amara's words settled over him. He led her down the polished aisle of high-end vehicles, each one more ostentatious than the last, and kept glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. There was a subtle shift in his posture, almost imperceptible, as if he were measuring her for the first time, trying to locate a crack in her calm. Amara, however, walked with the ease of someone who had seen the world in both its harshest and most glittering forms, and who had learned to move through it without flinching. "So, the Lamborghini, the one you were touching," he began, trying to sound casual, "it's one of our premium models. Top-of-the-line performance, incredible handling. Only a few left in the country." He gestured with one hand, trying to add weight to his words, while the other remained tucked awkwardly behind his back. Amara's eyes flicked over the car, taking in every curve, the gleam of the paint, the aggressive elegance of the design. She didn't speak for a moment, letting the dealer fill the silence with the sound of his own voice. "It's impressive," she said finally, her tone light, conversational, almost teasing. "But I'm more interested in the details. Engine, acceleration, safety features, and I'd like a test drive. Today, if possible." The dealer paused, caught off guard by her matter-of-fact demand. He had expected flattery, hesitation, or even awe, but not this directness, this absolute control of the conversation. He cleared his throat, attempting to mask the crack in his confidence. "Well, of course, we can arrange a test drive. But it usually takes some paperwork first, verification, you know how it is." Amara tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I have all the necessary documents," she said, opening her designer bag just enough to reveal the neat folder. Within, insurance, identification, bank verification. Everything. She held it out with an effortless grace, as if offering him a gift rather than submitting herself to a process he believed would intimidate her. The dealer took the folder with a trembling hand, flipping through the documents quickly. He glanced up at her once, then down again, unsure whether he was impressed or outraged. You seem very prepared," he stammered, and quickly added, "Most clients don't bring everything in advance." "It's unusual." Malik, standing just a step behind her, leaned casually against a polished car door. His arms were crossed, and his eyes scanned the room with a maturity that made him seem older than his 12 years. He noticed the subtle tension in the dealer's body, the flickers of doubt and hesitation that betrayed the man's confidence. Malik had learned early how to read people, and he could sense that his mother was orchestrating this encounter with precision, knowing exactly when to speak and when to remain silent. The dealer, desperate to regain control, attempted to charm them. "You're very knowledgeable. It's rare to see someone who knows exactly what they want." He smiled, a little forced now, trying to turn the situation back in his favor. "Are you interested in more than just this model? Perhaps we could look at a few other options, tailor the experience." Amara shook her head slightly, a soft laugh escaping her. "I don't need to look at anything else. This is the one." Her voice was calm, commanding, yet warm. There was no room for negotiation, no room for mockery. Her presence filled the space, an invisible weight that made the dealer's bravado seem childish. He nodded quickly, perhaps sensing that resistance would only make matters worse. Right. The Lamborghini. Excellent choice. I'll arrange the test drive right away." He gestured toward the car, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a realization that something was not as he assumed. Amara glanced at Malik and saw the small, almost imperceptible nod he gave her. She allowed herself the tiniest smile. It was the kind of exchange that said more than words could, a silent acknowledgement that the moment was nearing. Malik stepped forward slightly, catching the dealer's attention. The man's eyes flicked to the boy, then back to Amara, and for a moment, the smirk that had defined his entire demeanor faltered. Something in Malik's posture, in the quiet confidence in his gaze, made the dealer pause. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. "Your son?" the dealer asked, his voice slightly strained, as if testing a hypothesis he wasn't sure he wanted confirmed. Amara didn't answer immediately. She let the silence hang, letting the dealer fill it with his own curiosity and uncertainty. "I mean, he seems remarkable for his age," he said finally, as if speaking a truth he barely understood. Amara's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Yes," she said softly. "He is." The dealer swallowed hard, suddenly aware that he had underestimated not just her, but both of them. The confidence that had fueled his laughter was slipping, replaced by a quiet, creeping fear of realizing too late the magnitude of his error. He moved toward the car, his hands slightly trembling, trying to regain composure while arranging the test drive, all the while feeling that he had stumbled into something far beyond his expectations. Amara watched him carefully, letting him sweat, letting him think he was still in control, while in truth, she and Malik had already set the game in motion. The dealer had laughed at her, had judged her in an instant, but the laughter was fading now, replaced by a silent realization that the person in front of him was not to be underestimated. And when the true revelation came, when Malik's identity was finally recognized, he would have no choice but to confront the mistake he had made. For now, Amara remained calm, letting the dealer flounder, letting the tension rise like a storm about to break. Malik, poised and confident, mirrored her patience, ready to step forward at just the right moment. And in that moment, the dealer began to understand that nothing about this encounter would unfold the way he had imagined. The dealer fidgeted nervously as Amara's quiet control of the situation grew more apparent with every passing second. He had led her down the polished aisle, handled her documents, and arranged for the test drive, but there was a creeping sense of unease that he couldn't shake. Something about the way she carried herself, calm, measured, utterly unshakable, made him feel smaller, less significant, and he hated it. He glanced again at Malik, standing a few feet behind her, the boy's posture relaxed yet commanding, a stark contrast to the dealer's frayed composure. Then Malik stepped forward. He didn't rush or announce himself. He didn't need to. The simple movement of his shoulders, the faint, deliberate confidence in his step, shifted the atmosphere in the showroom like a gust of wind scattering papers. The dealer's eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he took in the boy's features, the striking resemblance to Amara, the poised gaze, the aura of quiet authority that seemed far beyond his years. There was a moment of recognition, a flash in his mind, and he instinctively tried to mask it with a cough, but it was too late. "This is Malik," Amara said softly, gesturing toward her son. Her voice was calm, even gentle, but it carried a weight that made the dealer stiffen. "You may have heard his name in the news. He's involved in a few enterprises." She let the pause linger just long enough for the dealer to swallow nervously. The man's eyes flicked between Amara and Malik, his mind scrambling. I don't." He stopped, realizing that his carefully constructed arrogance, the laughter, the smirks, it had all been premature. He had underestimated not only the woman in front of him but the boy who stood beside her. Malik's gaze was steady, assessing the man with a calm curiosity that bordered on intimidating. "Hello," he said simply, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that seemed impossible for a 12-year-old. "You've been speaking to my mother in a very casual tone. I'm curious, do you do this with all your clients?" The dealer's lips parted, words failing him. His hand trembled slightly as he gestured toward the Lamborghini. I thought. You thought wrong," Amara interjected, her voice soft but precise, cutting through the tension like a blade. She stepped closer to Malik, subtly protective yet utterly confident. "We don't need a lecture on cars. We understand what we want. You might want to take a moment to reconsider how you approach people, especially those you assume to underestimate." The dealer's face turned pale, a stark contrast to the smugness he had worn moments before. He swallowed hard, realizing that the moment he had laughed at Amara's appearance and demeanor was now a glaring mistake. His arrogance, which had seemed justified when he first saw her enter the showroom, had crumbled entirely. Malik's eyes met his squarely. "My mother handles negotiations efficiently. I handle business strategically. And you," he said, tilting his head slightly, are currently failing at both. A bead of sweat formed on the dealer's forehead. He tried to laugh nervously, but it came out hollow, a weak echo of the laughter that had filled the showroom before. I didn't know. I had no idea who you were, he stammered, the words barely audible over the sudden hush that had fallen across the room. Amara's smile was subtle, knowing, almost playful, but it carried no humor for him. Now you do, she said, her eyes never leaving his. And I suggest you keep that in mind before making assumptions about anyone, ever again. Malik leaned casually against the car, a posture that combined ease with authority. People often misjudge us, he said softly. They see the exterior and assume weakness. They hear the laughter and assume control. But we know better, don't we, Mom? Amara nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. We do. The dealer's hands were now fidgeting with his pen, his usual confidence completely eroded. He had walked into the situation believing he was in control, that he could dismiss Amara with a casual laugh, that he could underestimate both mother and son without consequence. But now he felt exposed, unprepared, and painfully aware of the gap between perception and reality. Malik straightened, his gaze sweeping over the car they had chosen. We'll take the Lamborghini, he said decisively. The black one, and we'll take it today. The dealer stammered, unable to find the words. Every instinct told him to resist, to assert authority, but he could see the truth in front of him, and resistance would be futile. He nodded mutely, motioning for the keys, while Amara allowed herself a tiny, victorious smile. As the dealer moved to retrieve the keys, Amara placed a hand lightly on Malik's shoulder. Patience, she whispered, always patience. Let them realize their mistake fully before you act. Malik nodded, understanding completely. The dealer had been arrogant, dismissive, and presumptuous. And now, in a single moment, he had learned exactly who he had been dealing with. The room had shifted, the balance of power had tilted, and it was unmistakably clear. This was no ordinary client encounter, and the dealer would never forget it. Amara's calm authority, combined with Malik's quiet presence, had transformed a simple test drive into a lesson in humility, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that assumptions could be fatal. The dealer, pale and trembling, now fully grasped the truth. Some mistakes, once made, could never be undone. Malik leaned closer to his mother as the car was brought around, his eyes twinkling with quiet amusement. Shall we? He asked. Amara nodded. Shall we? And together, mother and son stepped toward the car, their presence leaving the dealer frozen, forever aware of the error he had made the moment he had laughed.